The B-24 bomber crew took off from their base near Fairbanks, Alaska, on a regular mission in the winter of 1943, December 21st. On what seemed like a typical day in the expansive Alaskan sky, the first few hours were supposed to be a test for engine adjustments. But Leon Crane's plane plunged into an unexpected crisis, shattering the calm. The scenario became more dangerous for the crew when the instruments started acting erratically. As Leon Crane dangled under his parachute, he saw the bomber tumbling downhill in front of him, forcing him to jump. The rapid ejection of the co-pilot left Leon stranded in the freezing Alaskan tundra, with only the reverberations of the disaster to comfort him. Every member of the crew had to make a split-second decision in order to survive, due to the instrument's unpredictable behavior. The gentle hug of falling snow was Leon's landing pad. As he hurriedly gathered his parachute, the strong aroma of burning fuel wafted through the air, and he guessed that the debris was just 2 miles distant. The wreckage lay ablaze, a symbol of both hope and danger. Not only did the fire consume vital supplies and weapons, but it also had the potential to kill him and his fellow crew members. The chilly silence resounded with Leon's frantic cries, each name an impassioned plea for an unanswered question. Uncertainty and the terrifying aftermath of the collision created a somber scene of survival in the merciless Alaskan wilderness. Amidst the barren terrain as night fell, Leon Crane faced the reality of his situation, alone. Returning to the crash scene in the dark was a risk due to the icy landscape hiding dangerous rocks below. He stayed put and made do with what he had, knowing that walking on the rough terrain could be fatal. The young pilot, only 23 years old, made do with a silk parachute as an improvised sleeping bag. The combination of his flight suit, thick boots, and multiple layers of socks helped keep him somewhat warm, despite the freezing weather. He may have escaped quickly, but he still carried a flying cap, a dagger, and a matchbox. His fingers, however, were exposed to the merciless cold. Neglecting to wear gloves was his one mistake. Tucking his hands under his armpits was his natural response to stay warm. Still reeling from the realization that he was completely alone, Leon thought about how much time had passed since he had last heard from the base, an hour before the accident. He estimated a considerable distance, which increased the possible search area to an intimidating 200 miles. The temperature was dropping so precipitously that his predicament became even more critical. It had dropped to 40 degrees below zero. As night fell and the temperature plummeted, starting a fire became critical to his survival. Despite the merciless cold, Leon Crane fought the paralyzing chill to collect wood from the environment in order to light a fire that would save his life. He fought through 4 matches, their weak flames providing little relief as his fingers drew near numbness. A flash of insight came over him as he thought of the letter his dad had given him. He burned the paper among the wood, sacrificing it for the sake of survival, and finally managed to kindle a fire. Drawing near the flames for warmth, he fell asleep, embraced by the parachute. As the sun began to rise, he took stock of his perilous position. Knowing that search operations in such places had a narrow window, he realized the limited daylight hours decreased the chances of rescue planes spotting him in time. Recognizing the imminent difficulties, he allowed the reality to sink in. The gurgling brook beneath the ice made water a non-issue. However, the frostbite symptoms that had begun to show on his fingertips made his situation even more dire. Realizing he had no choice but to follow the stream, in the hopes that it would take him to civilization, Leon faced the terrible reality. Gathering his few possessions, he made one last call to his fellow soldiers, only to receive an eerie silence in response. With the stream as his compass, he set off on an isolated trek, hoping it would lead him to the Yukon River and, maybe, to safety in the end. It was a formidable obstacle for Leon Crane to traverse the dangerous landscape. Frozen stones and waist-deep snow blocked his path, forcing him to push through for hours at a time. The arrival of night necessitated lighting another fire, a formidable operation, further complicated by the diminishing supply of matches. Then it hit him. In this merciless environment, his prospects of survival were delicately dependent on the quantity of matches he had left. Leon struggled with a tough choice as he drew near the fire, his gaze fixed on the hue of his palms. Due to the dangerous weather, he was advised to remain near the crash scene in the hopes of being rescued. But his willpower was weakened by hunger, driving him to seek food in this barren country. Because of their ubiquitous presence, squirrels quickly became the only accessible prey. Adjusting to his situation, Leon fashioned a spear out of scraps and danced comically with the evasive squirrels. His frustration grew as he continued to miss, until finally, he gave in to desperation and threw stones at the agile creatures. The following days passed in a rhythmic cycle of survival, seeking warmth in his parachute cocoon and hunting for food. At the same time, Leon was struggling to stay alive. The relentless hunt for the lost crew continued at the base. With a mix of optimism and desperation, more than 20 planes combed the enormous landscape. Unfortunately, no sightings were reported, bringing the base to a halt. The unattended lockers stood as a powerful representation of the silent sorrow that filled the airfield. In the midst of everyone's grief, Leon Crane refused to give in to hopelessness. Facing the unknowns of his destiny, he embraced resilience and forged a path across the treacherous wilderness. Leon Crane, whose determination to survive was unyielding, left the streamside route. 8 days after the plane disaster, he ventured further into the snow-covered wilderness, continuing on a treacherous journey into the unknown depths of the forest. He became accustomed to stumbling, falling, getting back up and pressing forward. 100 miles seemed to have passed in the 2 hours of grueling effort, yet he had only covered a few hundred meters. Finally giving in to exhaustion, he made his way back to the familiar ground of the riverbank. Leon fanned the dying embers of the fire, wrapped himself in the parachute, and went to sleep, having earned it. The next day, he mustered his determination again. This time, he found the courage to ford the river, weaving in and out of the snowy hills as he went. Around every bend, he imagined he would finally see the cabin that had eluded him before. As he looked up into the chimney, he could almost feel the heat and the promise of steaming coffee driving him forward. However, with each turn, another hill appeared. As twilight gave way to night, Leon tried to make out a distant form, the shape of a cabin emerging from the darkness. He sprinted toward it, yelling with elation as the revelation hit him. Upon reaching the shelter, he discovered it empty, except for a few bags lying on a table. With frozen fingers wrestling against knots, he resorted to using his knife, revealing a treasure trove of sugar, cocoa, powdered milk, and raisins. While lighting a fire and making cocoa, he ate a handful of raisins for a quick rush of energy before giving in to a much-needed nap. Leon awoke, stepped out of the hut, and saw the meandering river. Convinced that a village lay ahead, he embarked on his journey downstream. An hour later, the terrible reality hit him. He was still stuck in the middle of nowhere, encircled by the enormous forest. Confronted with the harsh truth of isolation, no village, no people, not even the evidence of animal footprints, returning to the cabin became the only realistic choice. Icicles clung painfully to his nose as he staggered along the river. Fighting the unrelenting advance of night became an obsession with survival. Every stride was a struggle. To stop would be to surrender to the chilling emptiness that loomed over him. The sight of the cabin brought a glimmer of hope as morning rekindled. After 30 hours of non-stop trekking, he had returned to the familiar refuge. Quickly rekindling the fire, Leon encased himself in the parachute and gave in to much-needed slumber after bursting through the door. But that relief didn't last long. His hunger finally woke him. Leon recalled seeing a small shed outside the cabin nearly buried under snow. Inside, he found a treasure trove of goods, including food, clothing, a gun with ammo, and insulated gloves. Over the next 3 weeks, he recovered his strength. Then, armed with ingenuity, he constructed a sled out of discarded boards, piled it with supplies, and set off on the challenging expedition. As he dragged the improvised sled laden with supplies, Leon Crane persevered through the never-ending battle with the snow. Despite the grueling journey, he remained resolute. In the first hour, he managed to cover only half a mile. After a long day of hiking, he would set up camp, rest, and resume his journey at dawn. 7 days after leaving the cabin, his legs moved more effortlessly, allowing him to cover 4 miles each day. Along the way, he encountered another deserted cabin, standing as a silent monument to the brutal isolation of the wilderness. Regardless, Crane continued marking the days, March 7th, 8th, and 9th. Then, on March 10th, he stumbled upon a clearing, decorated with pine boughs, a clear sign of a temporary flyover. Eventually, the forest gave way to another cabin, this one with smoke curling from its chimney and clotheslines swaying in the wind. As Crane approached, a man named Albert Ames, a local hunter, emerged. While Crane recounted his incredible survival story, Ames paused to smoke a cigarette, marveling at the extraordinary journey that had unfolded more than 100 miles downstream in the Alaskan wilderness. The next day, Ames hooked up his dog team, placed Crane on the sled, and set out toward the nearest airstrip. With that, Ames finally led Crane away from the merciless wild. If you've made it this far, thank you for being part of this amazing adventure. If you enjoyed this story, check out our channel for more intriguing videos. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to share even more captivating stories with you. Be sure to join us for the next video. Thank you.